Buenas, buenas.
Hey, Marcelo. Good to see you.
Yes, sir. How's it going, man?
All good, all good. Thank you for hosting the session.
No, absolutely. I'm gonna actually let I have some people here that requested access. So let me go really quick through the information for the people here on the session, right? So feel free to ask questions on the channel. Jump on here and ask questions to Cesar. And as we progress, we'll be able to answer more and more questions. And if anyone wants to jump in, like Dragos just did, we can answer the questions live and have a lively discussion. Once you're done, if there's nothing more, you can drop off or let me know and I'll help you drop off the call so we can leave the space for someone else.
That's great, Marcelo. It's great to be here. Hi, Dragos.
Hi. I hope you can hear me now.
We do, yes, I do now.
Oh, perfect. May I start with one quick question? Because, of course, my interest in particular is into drone technology and parcel delivery. What do you think about blockchain? What would be the role of blockchain within such a logistic chain like drone delivery?
Yeah, what I explained in my session and what I believe is that a blockchain is going to be the technology that is going to enable, I would say, transactions and communications in the Internet of Things, more efficiency, decentralized, and more secure. So considering that last mile problem and the drone solutions, definitely will be a lot of sensors within the drones that will need to communicate and even transact with other sensors or with people. And then the blockchain will be the technology that will bring this trust to allow each of these people to talk, connect or transact in a secure way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, and then there will be some more things, that's the high level. And Michał is adding some specific topics here. Michał, you're welcome to join us here as well. Please join here and share with us. Anything else, Dragos, that you wanna?
No, if you have any example that you know of blockchain integrated into last mile delivery, drone robotics or ground delivery robotics.
Okay, let me go then more specific. What I have seen in the last year is a lot of pilots in food supply chain in general. So it's being used by big box retailer, but also by small companies. And where it provides another great service from blockchain, which is provenance and control on the supply chain in the whole thing. And then the main benefit of the technology in there is that there are many inefficiencies in the supply chains all around the world. So blockchain will really help with those inefficiencies, and it unlocks a lot of value that is lost in there. So and then back to the example, companies like Walmart, they are now asking in some pilots to the vendor to join their blockchain database in order to make sure that the food mainly, which is one of the pilots that is going on, has all the right tracking. And when they sell it at the store, they want to make sure that the food is good and they don't have any problem. And if they have any problem, they have all the tracking mechanisms and the provenance. They know the provenance and the origin of the food, so they can go back. And if there is a problem with the end user, they can go and detect the problem in the origin and then take care of that very fast.
Yeah, traceability is very important. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes. And Michał is with us now. So Michał, I don't know, you want to add something on that?
No. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dragos. Marcelo, thank you for facilitating. No, Cesar, as you said, there are some applications, but we can't forget it's very early, right? So drones are fairly mature, but, not all the regulation is there in place yet, even for, like smaller drones, not to mention like manned and unmanned vehicles, especially for larger transportation. So blockchain is still, like fairly early. So I'm not aware of companies specifically combining blockchain with drones. There are companies that combine, for example, hardware with blockchain. Like one example is Chronicled. They're quite an interesting company. But just talking about the technology, we should just make sure that we first address some kind of a problem or a need with blockchain instead of just building it out. This is what we try to preach. It's great to have great technology, but we need to make sure that it serves a purpose.
Now, I cannot hear Marcelo.
Yeah, Marcelo, we can't hear you.
There we go. Yeah, I think I was gonna go through the entire day without having straight canceled now. So it's very interesting how blockchain. You guys were talking about the blockchain not being fully developed yet. And I think last time, I don't know if it was with you, Cesar, or with Mars, that he's building a very interesting blockchain island. So that blockchain is not necessarily intended to actually reach a critical mass in mass market in terms of cryptocurrency, but it's more of becoming the network that interconnects every element that we have and actually powers it. And I think it was Martha who suggested that we think of certain microeconomies that be able to talk to each other. And I know that there's a project here. I don't know if it's specifically in Florida about putting cryptocurrencies as part of one of a city initiative, a citywide initiative. What can you guys tell me about the implementation of mixing different cryptocurrencies and blockchain networks between each other?
Yeah, I think in the long run, the project that really integrate not only blockchain but all the other technologies and facilitate this communication of data between devices and actors and people are going to be business as usual. But maybe this is, I don't know, 5-10 years from now, but that's the future. I know in Florida, for example, they are looking to it for the supply chain, which is an important industry. And people in the supply chain are getting together around this and see how they can connect the city and make the city a more smarter city, because they are able to use the data better. And they want to do it not only with supply chain, but eventually also they would like to do it in real estate, health, which are the key industries in the region. Definitely. On supply chain, it's very important because it's a very transaction-oriented space. And blockchain is going to disrupt first those industries that are very transaction-oriented. And then we will see different trends as we are seeing with money. But let me first talk about supply chain. In the developed countries where supply chain works, so the centralized companies, like Mars, for example, which is a global company, but it's in the developer world, they will be able to integrate blockchain and still make it a centralized system and using the technology to optimize everything. But in some other countries where the supply chain doesn't work, so it will be more decentralized and it will come from the smaller players who will be able to connect directly between them without an intermediary. And I was talking about money because the same thing we will see with banks. Banks like a Bank of America, to have an example here in the US, they are already very invested in blockchain. They have a lot of patents in blockchain, and they will provide their services better using the technology. In some other places like Africa, just back to my example in the presentation, a mobile operator created M-Pesa, and with M-Pesa, they are enabled connecting to cryptocurrencies. So it will be more of this intermediation and the smaller players to play amongst them. And we can see that also in China, for example, with the mobile payments like Alipay or WeChat. They are very good. They are very potent. People do a lot of payments through the platform because they are easy to use. And then they will integrate blockchain technology, and then it will grow from there. So we will see different. What I want to say is that with blockchain, we will see different approaches. one that wants to do some centralized approach and do things better because things work, and another one where will be more decentralized because decentralization doesn't work.
Interesting. And what do you guys think, Raul, Michelle? Since I got you still here.
Yeah, Dragos, please go first, because I might get a bit philosophical.
No, you go, Mikhail.
Okay, so I two notes. Like, first of them is about technology being an enabler, and the other one is an actual answer to your question, Marcelo. So the first one, like, this is exponential, like ExO, right? Exponential organizations, but it's based on exponential technologies, and the technologies become the enabler. So let's say when we talk about drones, we wouldn't be talking about drones if we didn't have a GPS. But the inventor of GPS, just satellite positioning, all other stuff, they had no clue that what they would invent would be used in Pokemon Go, right? So we're kind of at this stage that we have blockchain and we see that we can do some new things with it, but we're not exactly sure, what will be the applications down the road, right? So that's one of the things. And as I was saying, supply chains is fairly straightforward, but there are other things where blockchain can make a difference, or rather, more than blockchain, it's cryptographic technologies, all sorts of, right? So, people started saying, it's like, hey, maybe we can rebuild the whole web using, this cryptographic technology, right? Maybe we can rebuild the financial system. Maybe we can allow people to own their own identity or their own information, or, do programmable money, or maybe to their own communities or economies, right? So this is the other important point. And the purpose there is, or maybe where I see it, once we go to kind of like the next stage where we have more automated economies and more AI, stuff will change. For example, if you have an autonomous car, imagine you have an autonomous car, it can drive around, right? So you buy a car, but then you don't drive it. So you allow it to just drive around and make money for you. But then let's say if you want to negotiate with this car, like, you can't really sign a contract with a car, right? And you can't really sign a contract with, this distributed kind of program. So it's a very different mental model. And when we go back, to why we have companies in the first place, it's because if I do a repeatable job, let's say, I don't know, I need to ship a container from here to here, there's someone who knows very well what has to be done and what kind of equipment has to be used and how to do it. I don't need to go every single time and figure it out. So there's this kind of reduced friction in doing those transactions. So once we switch to the next level, which will be this very, very much automated, programmable way of doing business, for example, like with drones, AI, those blockchain smart contracts, this is where we will see, real power of those technologies, but we're not there yet. Like, for normal humans, it's still kind of difficult to figure out what to do, maybe with the exception of decentralized finance, which has, like, this is a really big application now, and it's been taking off this year a lot because it allows us to do new things. For example, people are able to take a loan for 50 microseconds, then do some kind of, like swaps on the market, use some kind of leverage, make money and pay back the loan and pay interest only on those 50 milliseconds that they actually borrowed the money. So, again, very difficult for us to manage or to compute because it's just, so new and so abstract. But it's there and it's an enabler. And now we need to figure out, what are the good uses for it.
And I see here Joanna is posting a couple interesting things, right? And Dragos, do you have any comments on this?
No, more to emphasize the fact that, I totally agree, probably with what Cesar said before, that it's in terms of supply chains, being such a transactional thing, probably it will disrupt first one of this emerging industry. But let me tell you what I think about this kind of technology, probably blockchain. For instance, I've been advocating for the last 4 or 5 years that probably the last mile logistics will eventually shift towards precision indoors delivery. But for this to happen, so our current model is door-to-door delivery. Whatever it's a warehouse, it's up to your front door. So your door is basically a huge barrier. In order to perform precision indoors delivery, you need a different type of delivery. A robot capable of probably opening doors or taking elevators, whatever, or a drone capable of landing on vertical surfaces, like a real vertical helipad, which we are currently designing now. But for this to happen, you need, of course, technology, because if you build the alternative for the last leg of the last mile delivery, you need a technology like blockchain to be very precise in terms of who delivers where, who returns what, and what goes in another direction. So I totally agree with Caesar that probably, for instance, from my perspective alone, it's going to be a huge disruption in terms of last mile, first mile, last mile delivery. That's the only comment I have.
Beautiful. And actually, before I said to Joanna that she just joined to ask her question live, I think that one of the, I don't know, probably by processing in the background of this is like blockchain is going to be a tool for trust, like trust 2.0 would be a correct term, maybe, I don't know. But people has lost the trust in the institutions to do the best for them, and the transparency that we are generating with blockchain and the technology that allows us to enable further situations there seems to be our key point. And this goes actually directly to what you're going to say, Joanna, so all yours right now.
Yes, the same. I am congresswoman in my country. I am from Argentina, and I am working to unify the world by a universal constitution. I am working also to lead a mass mobilization to put in the power table of the power the new social contract. But I am very committed with the exponential technology because I am young people, and I want to know how can implement this through blockchain. How can explain this in an easy way to the common people to understand and to trust through the blockchain in politicians, in institutions, in a new kind of government in the entire world?
Yeah, Joan,
That's a tough question.
Let me bring some examples, because answering your question will be difficult, but I think bringing some examples can help. There is a pilot going on in Guatemala where the voting system is not, it has, let's say, it has its own way of doing things, and the whole system is something that people don't trust. So what the pilot is doing is that they are going into the tables where the people has to vote and making sure that they put the information directly into the blockchain at that stage as an additional way to everybody know what's going to happen. And they have volunteers doing it in the same way that volunteers collect the votes and put together some tables in the city. They are doing it directly into the blockchain. So at the same time that they go through the traditional process and the fast approach, they are doing it into the blockchain, and it's an additional mechanism of trust for them. Anyway, whatever you put in the blockchain, you are not responsible. You need to make sure that the information you put in the blockchain is right, because otherwise the blockchain will take something as a true that is not a true. So you need to be careful about it. Then in Argentina, when we were doing some work through Fast Track with the Colombia Minister of Justice, we find out a very interesting project where the judges, were supplemented with smart contracts. So the smart contracts play a role where people can ask for, can present their problems, and then everybody who is listening the problems can vote. And then there are also some other people that can vote. And they do all that, and they automatize all that using smart contracts. And then in Colombia itself, the Justice Department also wanted to solve some of the issues. And what blockchain brings is the fact that you can automatize these processes with a smart contract, and then you can bring some trust in the process. again, the mechanisms to make sure that the information you put in the blockchain needs to be very good, because if you put bad information, you will get bad things. But if you get good information into it, then the whole process, which is very complicated and can be very, fragile, and people can manipulate it, will be protected. So those are the things I have seen. Then there are some projects like Democracy 2.0, back to Marcelo's point on Trust 2.0, that is out there, and there are some other projects also going out on there. Onboarding themselves, I have seen some, but more for in people abroad of the country that they don't have a place where they can go and vote. Some organizations are enabling, and I know a project from the University of Colorado that they are enabling people living in remote places outside the country an opportunity to vote through blockchain. So these are some of the things I have seen, but I don't know, maybe the other people in the panel has some other examples that can illustrate.
So much.
Yeah, Kleros, that's the one. I just saw you put it into the...
Yeah, so from my side, and I'm also checking the questions, Joanna. There are a lot of projects, and as I mentioned before, blockchain is an enabler. So you can try to have, let's say, more transparent voting, right? One thing I mentioned there is, liquid democracy. So Salim is always saying that democracy was invented where you didn't have good communication. So you had to basically have a representative from a city that would represent the city, and they would vote, assuming that they would do everything in their best interest, right? But the concept of liquid democracy is, okay, I know that, for example, this guy is conservative, so if I want to have a conservative vote on this particular issue, I will just give him my vote for this particular issue to this person. And now let's say, we're voting on some things related to, let's say, gender equality, so I will put my vote for this particular lady to vote on this particular issue, right? So that's one of the things that you could do with blockchain. Other thing that you could do, and there's a project called Common Stack, which is doing conviction voting, is that, for example, you cannot change your opinion too quickly, so you cannot swap votes, right? So you can start doing more flexible and agile way of doing that. And there are some other projects, right? So Kleros is, for example, conflict resolution. Aragon is doing a platform basically to do kind of beyond border organizations or companies. Democracy Earth is trying to do, democracy using those autonomous organizations. Common Stack, they're trying to develop tools for other people to manage commons. Then Digo Foundation is a group of people working on decentralized and distributed governance. There's a lot of work happening, but the key point there is, the trust is between people, or trust is in something else, right? So if people don't trust the system, they would need to trust in a different system, which is basically computer code. And then that's not an easy thing, right? So there are no shortcuts, but technology, again, can help in doing some things, and Cesar already gave some examples. Now, the other thing about the universal constitution and new social contract, first of all, social contract oftentimes is not, it's not like written down, or it's not set in stone, right? So people can behave in a different way. And also, if you want to have the so-called, like dry code, or you write something down in code, it might be difficult then to make it compatible with a legal system, at least the way we understand it. And the most common example we usually give is, if I have a contract, an agreement with you, and I say that, like I will put reasonable effort in order to do something. For smart contract, that's not good enough, right? Because it has to be able to determine if it's yes, no, and based on that, it executes. So it might be possible that we might do this kind of global contract, and everyone will have some kind of say in it, but it will still be not very human compatible, I would say, at this point, because like we're not used to function in code or those rigid systems. But we're making progress. We need to try what we can do, and now we have the technology to do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Joanna. That was an amazing question. I think there's a lot to unpack in terms of Trust 2.0. I'm gonna use that throughout all this session. But I want to hear from Daniel. Daniel, thank you very much for joining here. Do you have any particular question here for Cesar? Oh, Daniel, we cannot hear you. You're muted.
Thank you, Marcelo, for letting me in. And I appreciated Cesar's presentation on the main stage. And somehow the De Soto sort of cadastre or property rights management was mentioned. And I was wondering if fluid chains has such an application, or the De Soto application. I'm an investor in T0, and I know that those guys, were working in conjunction with De Soto as far as the property right application is concerned on the blockchain. And I wanted to know where the evolution of all of that is at this point. By the way, I'm originally from Haiti, and it's a country that is a good model for using the blockchain in everything and anything, just to wipe out a lot of the human element that is part of its the slowness and the corruption and the underdevelopment. I do believe if you take the human factor in, a lot of the decision-making process, you can get, some oxygen into a system like that. So it would constitute a great model.
Yeah, we are aware of some projects going on, particularly in United States and here in Florida, where one of the largest companies in the US holding the records of properties and large real estate conglomerates are starting to evaluate. They are only running some pilots at this stage on how to digitalize the whole process. As Aline mentioned, it's huge, because every time each of us, which is not that often, thanks God, but every time we buy a property or we sell a property, it's a nightmare. The process is a nightmare. Changing the titles is difficult. If I want to change the title from my name into my company, because I create an LLC, for example, to be protected, it's a nightmare. The process is a nightmare. When it should be something as easier as I own the title because it's my property, so it's mine, I own it, so I change it from here to there. So it's very easy, and that's the concept that blockchain can solve. So we know about those projects. We've been working on some things on intellectual property in the innovation, and we are also piloting some stuff there on the innovation communities for digital property, which is in somehow could be similar. And then the other thing we've been working is with the tokenization of financial assets, like trust, for example, to make easier to move those assets from one place to another place. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we've been doing with some projects, still earlier stage phases, is tokenization of real estate property. It's a different thing. This is not the tokenization of the rights. This is the tokenization of the property as it is. So that's what I can tell you in few minutes. But yeah, we do have some experience, and we'll be happy to connect and evaluate how can we work together with you with T0 on that matter.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Cesar. I actually want to read a question that Anna just posted. I think one of the most important things that we can do as part of opening ExO, right? And I think you, Cesar, are a fantastic example of how we are actually bringing reality into all of the complex questions that are: how do we implement blockchain? How do we make people understand blockchain? And Anna, I'm going to read your question, but of course you feel free to jump on the moderation panel if you wanna ask it live. Anna is creating WePlot. It's a startup that connects stories in the audiovisual market and generating community between author, experts, and players, right? Which is a multi-sided market. Which I'm assuming that and she mentioned, right, there's a delicate issue between with intellectual property. So with this particular example, how can we make sure that we leverage blockchain, and how can that blockchain be leveraged to produce a change and help here?
Anna, let me bring an example. I believe the examples are a good way, in this short format to illustrate. Then, of course, we can have more deeper conversation later on. But I want to talk regarding your question or copyrights and a platform that is the Kodak One platform. This is a project that Kodak developed. It's a blockchain project. They actually have the Kodak coin. And what they do is, if you are a photographer, they are able to get your photo and assign the rights of that photo to you. So when somebody uses it, they pay for it, and then you get your copyrights. So this project is out and running. And again, it's the same concept that I explained to the titles from Daniel's question, and the same concept also of identity and certification. Mm-hmm. For example, in the ExO network, we will soon be able to have the certification ourselves in our wallets and share that certification with whoever needed. If my customer need my certification, I don't need to go and ask ExO for the certification. I just send the certification, or I send a right to the person to have access to my certification. Mm-hmm. We could do that. We will do that soon with ExO certification, but it can be done with university certifications, with any kind of things. And if it can be done with certification, it can be done with identity, which is something critical, because when we are all operating in the digital world, if you as a small business, you don't have control of digital identity of your customer, you are not in that business. And having control doesn't mean that you have it. Having control could mean like you give the control to the users, and then you even reduce costs. And then that's where blockchain is even more interesting. So that will be my comments to Anna's question on copyrights.
Yeah, and my quick addition, we're advising a company doing something similar, but they focus mostly on creating engagement between the creators and the audience, and also creating a bridge with people doing financing, right? So there are different ways that blockchain can be used, because again, it can become the tool for intellectual property. I mean, like, we're not lawyers, okay, and we still exist in the current legal system, which has its own disadvantages and advantages. But the simple thing that you can do is you can literally kind of stamp what you did on the blockchain, because that's what blockchain is. It's basically like a long list of entries that that they're difficult to change, and they were ordered by time. And then at some point in time, you can say, it's like, hey, like, it's mine. It's like, how do you prove it's mine? It's like, look, this is what I have. This is a stamp of it recorded on blockchain 2 years ago, and I can prove to you that I control this piece, right? That's one of the things that we can do, but that might not be enough from the legal point of view. So yeah, there are many ways to approach it. And of course, there are like other companies in the space. I remember there was this singer with a very creative name. She wanted to do this intellectual property rights for music, right? So you can transfer it, or also do direct attribution and revenue streams for creators when they were streaming music, just avoiding all the all the platforms and all the intermediaries. So many ways to approach it, but you can't forget that you're still in the current legal system. And then that also goes back to what you mentioned before. Different countries will have different regulations, and you need to just navigate through this, let's say, forest. And Marcelo, you're on mute, and your question, I think, is next.
I saw your question, Marcelo, as well. But go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I posted that one so we can discuss. They can discuss there in the chat. I wanted to listen a little bit to what Gerardo was saying here, right? The blockchain is supposed to be cracked by quantum computers, which is very interesting. Now we are going to go into something fun about the acceleration of the acceleration. So we are still trying to build a blockchain network, right? And we already have a looming threat of quantum computers being able to crack this. What's your opinion on this? Do you know if there's any already something being in the works? A replacement technology, or
I will say I will link the question from Gerardo to your question. How we can trust the blockchain. So the first thing, let's talk about Bitcoin, which has been there for 10 years. So up to today, it hasn't been hacked, but it could be hacked. I'm not going to go into the discussion. You never know. Hackers normally are very good, but it hasn't. So that's an important thing. And then why is that? Because the blockchain technology could be implemented in different ways. It could be centralized. Then I use the technology. I'm Bank of America and use the technology to improve the processes and everything in what I do as a bank. It's centralized. Or I'm Facebook. I'm creating, through my subsidiary, I'm creating Libra now. And it's a centralized thing. Then it could be a consortium. So it's closed, it's not open, it's managed by a group of company. It could be still centralized or decentralized through the nodes of that consortium. Or it could be public, like Bitcoin, and then anybody can run a node. And then the blockchain, as a blockchain, they have to define their own governance system to modify whatever they want to modify. And normally that governance system is controlled also by the community. So the decentralization brings a little bit more difficulty in making changes, and the technology itself make it difficult to make changes, because the blockchain is exactly that. The transactions are accumulated, it complete a block, and then it goes to the next block. And that previous block cannot be unlocked without unlocking the previous one. And it's been like by Bitcoin, it's been 10 years, of transaction of multiple computing around the world. And like Bitcoin, there are so many other blockchains out there. So the longer the blockchain is being exposed to the market and more transactions they have and more blocks they have, it's more difficult to go backwards. It could happen, but it's more difficult to go backwards. And at the time that quantum computing are there, quantum computing can be also added into the blockchain to accelerate the blockchain. So yes, it could happen. I'm not going to go into the discussion. I just wanted to illustrate and exemplify how the technology works and how that can be decentralized. And then it will not depend on one person. It will be depending having many people in an agreement. And then one key thing for the blockchain to be useful is to be well distributed. Because if one person has 50% or more of the nodes and the tokens in the network, so it's still very centralized. But if nobody has more than 2%, so you will need at least 25 people in an agreement to make a change before it happens. So that's the concept. It's a technology concept and as a governance concept as well, all together.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what Cesar said, at some point we need to trust the company creating the blockchain. But if you choose a specific solution, like for example, ExO's blockchain is based on a proof of stake algorithm. So basically, based on specific algorithm, you decide what are the transactions that are added to the blockchain. So at some point, it's not the developers who decide what's added to the blockchain, but the people who hold part of the network decide. So in that case, that's why you have this kind of holy grail of decentralization, because then you don't need to trust the single company, but you should trust that it's in the best interests of the people who participate, that they will do the right thing. So that's what you have to trust then. And now, when it comes to quantum computers, I know that there are some projects. It's just, as Cesar said, it's not something that is going to happen tomorrow. So I'm not particularly interested in it. But there are efforts to do quantum-resistant like cryptography algorithms, which is kind of the technology underlying the blockchains, and also some blockchains that are specifically built for quantum computing. The key point there is one of the technologies that is underlying blockchain is hashing, which means I take whatever input I want, and it will spit out always the same amount of characters. And there's a limited amount of characters that you can get. So normally, when I give you those 32 or 64 characters, you are not able to go backwards to see, like what did I transform to get this string, right? The thing is that it's a large number, but it's still a finite number of elements. So then you can, if you have a lot of computational power, or you have different kind of paradigm like quantum computing, what would be traditionally very difficult to calculate, it becomes much easier. So at some point, it might be possible that using quantum computing, you can try to basically hack or take over people's private keys. So then you can get access to what the entries they control in the blockchain and then mess with this. But we're not anywhere near that yet. But of course, like it's kind of like with security, it's a cat and mouse race. So some people will try to, hack it, and then some people will come up with some measures, and then something new will pop out, and like it's a constant race.
Joanna, you were gonna say something? You're muted.
Yes, it's so interesting. But my question is, I understand very, very easy the example with the Bitcoin, because we are increasing the trust, because people are trusting in each other, and this is the way. But how can I escalate this in all the entire humankind to use the blockchain to vote or even to make referendums in order to evolve the people to participate in the governance, in the new governance? I cannot see it.
Make it that simple, and just have people get used to it. It's kind of like with mobile phones, or most of disruptive innovations require change in mindset. So like now you go into stranger's car, which is Uber, and 15 years ago you wouldn't do that, but someone started, and then people accepted it as normal. It's the same with Airbnb and living in someone's apartment, or I don't know, putting your credit card on the internet. So if you give them good enough application and make it that simple, people will start doing that without understanding what's really going on, but then they will accept it as the new normal. And if you have enough people, like enough critical mass, it will just be like, oh, okay, that's the way we do stuff now. But yeah, that requires time, and that requires really good, really simple, really useful applications. And it's hard to do those.
Yeah, I heard a quote recently. Oh, sorry, Cesar, go ahead.
I will add, Johanna, that you are in very good shape if you already understand Bitcoin, because many people don't even understand Bitcoin, but that's a very, you are well advanced. But the truth is that at the end, what's money is that you trust someone that they are giving something to you. If I give you $100, you get the $100, and do you believe me that it's $100? You can't even check, and see if it's real, but you can see it's real. So at the end, what Bitcoin solves is that problem of trust applicable to money. But any problem related to trust, like Salim was explaining of the Byzantine generals, is also applicable. So your problem about the trust on voting, and people really, it's also a problem of trust. So the technology solved that problem. How you implement it, you will need more time, do some customer journeys, understand what needs to be done, what job needs to be done, and then understand how to apply the technology. But what is important is that if you already understand Bitcoin, you understand the most important thing is that blockchain solves the problem of trust. So it means any trust problem can be solved by blockchain.
Well, let me add two things there. Like one, you said the example with dollars. It works because when you have $100, other people will accept those $100. And why is that? Because the dollar is backed by the US government, and people believe in the US government or the system, okay? So that's why it's happening. And, going back to voting works now because people believe that the votes will be counted in the proper way. I mean, like I come from Poland, and, we had communism, and the saying was, it's not important who votes, but who counts the votes, okay? So yeah, it's a different trust system. So you don't need to trust, let's say, the government, but then you would trust, like the voting system made on blockchain, or you would trust that if you can check that, that transaction was done on blockchain, it's like, oh, okay, so then it's done. DAO stack. Yeah, I heard about it.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Yes, I can understand the Bitcoin, but my mission is we can to to the people in an easy way to involve more people in this. And this is the difficult thing.
Right, and what I was gonna say before, it's 100% on point with what Joanna just said. We experienced this a while before when computers first came and programming first came, and we are living through that phase with quantum computers. Right now, I'm pretty sure that none of us is fluent in writing code, for example, for quantum computing. So we need to simplify the framework and give the user tools to get there. Same as we did way back when we were doing normal computer, right? From migrating from the cards into lines of code, into precompiled code, into drag and drop applications currently online. And I think that's what you're saying, Joanna. We need to find a way, a path that we can take to take blockchain from the amazing concept that it is right now. And it's not dumb it down, right? But it's actually putting it in the right place, in the right space, so people can understand how can we get to the future of blockchain? How can we make any John Doe understand blockchain as much as now people understand the difference between Facebook and a static page? And I think that's a future that we all need to walk towards. So we realize all of our separate visions that are collective in the same kind.
I would say there's another step to that. I mean, I'm an engineer, so I more or less know how microwave works, but I don't need to know how microwave works to use it. And oftentimes, like if you talk with people, they might not know, like what's internet or HTTP or whatever else, but, they like, can you use Facebook? Yes. Can you use WhatsApp? Yes. But, like they say, I don't know what's internet. I don't understand internet, right? So if we get to that level of usability, like most of the job is done, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Exactly. I like that term. We should stick with usability of blockchain. I think that's definitely a term to bring forward.
Yeah, and the other thing to say is that we are early on in the technology. Salim mentioned is like 95, the equivalent to 95 for the internet is where we are now with blockchain. So what's going to be important is which are going to be the applications. And yes, store of value with Bitcoin is the first killer application. Smart contracts is the second one. Then maybe tokenization of assets is now starting to happen. And then many pilots on many other things are starting. But we don't know yet which are going to be the Facebook or the Amazon or, Uber or Airbnb, even more elaborated things of the blockchain of the Web 3.0. So we will need to create all that together. So yes, there are many open answers, but this is where we are. We are early in the stage.
Guys, just in case for everyone, the main stage is live. So we can definitely, I love this conversation. It's going really nice. And Orlando just posted something really good about certificating your knowledge in blockchain. So I'm very happy to continue if all the rest of the people present here wants to stay. If not, I'll keep the channel open for chat interactions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will contact Cesar and Michael because I need to work with you to put this in the power table very, very quickly.
Absolutely, Johanna. Let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And Marcelo, only there is one open question.
Yeah.
From Gerardo. I don't know if you want to tackle on that one.
Absolutely. So let me find really quick the question from Gerardo, because I see, Gerardo, that you mentioned a couple of things here. So is it the one about DAO, right? The DAO Stack Initiative?
Yes, I think he was asking about DAO.
Let's go right ahead.
So I'm not fully familiar with the DAO stack, that he mentioned, but he's gone now. But anyway, let's say that the DAO is the decentralized autonomous organization, and it's a structure that is being created to manage these decentralized projects, but it's not the only one. It's a good one, but now many people talk also about decentralized autonomous associations, for example, the DAA. And what they are is different ways of organization to manage decentralized projects like the one we are discussing about, and to provide governance to those projects.
Interesting. So
Mihao is more versed on the topic, so I don't know, Mihao, you want to add something? But Gerardo is not with us anymore.
Yeah, like,
yes, he just wrote down there that he's with us still.
Oh, okay, he's here. Okay.
Oh,
Gerardo, we can invite Gerardo to explain us.
Yeah, here he comes.
Yes, Gerardo.
so I'll wait maybe a second until
Hi, how are you?
here.
So,
Hi
Hey,
there.
Gerardo.
hi, how are you? The reason, hi, Michael. So the reason because I wanted to share that is because I saw your interest into applying blockchain into governance. So this is a solution that uses blockchain in order to accelerate the decision taking, and it could have like a governmental. We can apply it into governments and into other initiatives. So
On that note, as Cesar said, I've been studying and, let's say, connecting with some people from many different initiatives. I recognize the name. I don't know the details. I know they're connected with the Genesis DAO, and I heard, like some good things and some learning experiences from that experiment. So, as Cesar mentioned, it's not the only initiative. It's one of the pioneering ones, but it's not the only one. The issue there, I would say, is still with usability. In a sense, we talk governance, and people, like, my shorthand or explanation for governance is basically making decisions. Yeah. But then what I've been learning from the decentralized governance community is you first need to specify what kind of decisions are you going to take. And fortunately or unfortunately, all of the DAOs that you have so far, they decide basically where does the funding go. So it's not at the level where we can decide, let's say, I want blue playground, like in this neighborhood, or we should pay equal wages to women. It's no, we have, this decentralized virtual organization with people we don't know, and it has kind of like a pool of money, and we decide, whether we should grant money here or there. That's basically that's the core application of DAOs at this point. So we need to get better at it. It's a very good starting point. And it's one more tool to our toolbox, but it requires more work.
Yeah, exactly. It requires more work. So the tipping point will be UX, usability. The day that we make this easy to use, and that everybody understands the principle that money is just a matter of trust between individuals.
Well, it's an interesting point, actually. I've been talking to a couple VCs. Of course, right, the traditional ones. I have people on both sides of the fence, right? The one that want to invest cryptos and the one to want to invest dollars, and the ones that are looking for dollars, to invest in dollars. There's still that very annoying underlying concept that cryptocurrencies is going to be used for bad. It's not going to be used for the higher purpose. It's going to be used to money laundering and hiding things. And but in the end, I realized that these people don't really know the heart of the technology, the heart of the reason behind it.
But actually, actually,
go ahead.
The reason because of that, it's kind of not so easy to tap into it, but it's power. It's a fiat currency that they dismantle these kind of initiatives, and they pay a lot of propaganda against these technologies because they cannot control it.
Well, what I found there, it's super interesting, and I'll let you speak in a sec there, Michael, is that in reality, since they understand so little, and they're probably getting that negative feed, if you pitch them the same logic without mentioning blockchain, but with the blockchain implementation either way, they will say this is a fantastic idea. That the decentralization concept is fantastic, and you're gonna rock it. But the moment that they hear that word, those type of entrepreneurs, they drop out instantly.
Yeah, but actually, I think we will get into that. The U.S. government, they are developing their own cryptocurrency. And they're doing a lot of research with that, and China too. So the only thing is that they try to make this traceable so they know who's doing what, and they will get that.
Yeah, China is way ahead, and like I feel very tempted to talk a bit more about like money, macroeconomics, and other of my like recent insights, but that will be a long conversation. But look, with blockchain, yes, it's actually easier to do money laundering. There were examples of that recently, but then one of the properties of blockchain should be that it's censorship resistant. So no single entity can say it's like, you stop operating or something. It happened recently. So people are saying. So in essence, it's like, yes, some things related to crime, yes, they are a bit easier. And the other thing is that 2/3 of international trade is done in dollars, and the US has the biggest military budget, which, by the way, like misaccounted something like $1 trillion in the last year. So, I mean, for me, it sounds very much like hypocrisy, just jumping onto those technologies, saying, this is done for, like funding sketchy initiatives. But, that's as Gerardo said, that's the topic of, like power and, fiat, like fiat money. Why it's called fiat? Because fiat literally means because I said so, and because the government said so. So, for example, Facebook can say it's like, oh, we're doing this currency, but they have to deal with governments. But the government, like the US government, can say it's like, okay, tomorrow the dollar is not called dollar, it's called, I don't know, like apples. And, you have to comply. And it's the same that China can do, like, look, tomorrow we're switching to this digital currency. And if you're not doing that, we will put you in jail. And, that's it. You don't have any issues with adoption.
Agree. The economic system responds to the government. We need leaders putting this in the table as a priority, and this is the way.
Trust me, there are a lot of people who are talking about that, but it's just like we live in the existing system, which is difficult to transition to a better state without making a lot of mess in the process.
Well, I think there's a good chunk of ingenuity, well, not ingenuity, innocence of thinking that a technology should prevent humanity's nature, right? It's like all the bad things, money laundering and everything else is still happening right now. So it's not that we are trying to put a system on top of that to prevent it. Actually, it's like it's up to us to prevent
one
it.
of the speakers were saying before that the human nature is not that. It's less than 1% who use technology and who do bad things. So everybody else is doing good things. So let's focus on the good things.
Yeah.
We are not here to.
Exactly, and actually, and all that exists because the system allows it. Actually, if you look at history, the fiscal paradise were implemented by England when the colonies start to get independent. So,
Yeah, exactly.
anyways.
So, guys, I have to go now, but it's really great having you here. You made this session very, very interesting. Thank you for everybody participating here. And Marcelo, thank you for hosting us. And
thanks for that.
Like always, it's a pleasure, get all your inputs and insights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing to have all of you here. They made this super, super fun to moderate. So I'm really happy.
Amazing conversation. Thank you, Cesar, Michael, Gerardo, Marcel.
Bye.
That was a pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.